All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. I'm your host, Jordan Hawthorne. I'm joined, as always, by. I think I need to change the adjectives up because marvelous and wonderful just doesn't apply. I think I've been thinking about it all day. I'm either going to go with the most popular man in Minnesota. Well, I'm definitely going to keep this one for sure. I'm joined by NFL insider Jack Day, who of course broke that big Sheldon Richardson news. Jack, I'm gonna have a little fun with you being an insider now. I'm definitely gonna poke fun at it a lot. But props to you, man. I know that you've had a crazy couple of days. We haven't talked in front of people, or honestly, anywhere outside of texting each other for, 3 weeks to a month now. A lot's happened in that time. We're about to dive into it, but how have you been, and how's your last couple of days went?
It's been a crazy couple of days. It was a extremely exciting Monday. Obviously, I had that news and sent that out. I wasn't expecting it to take off like it did. I wasn't expecting to see my name retweeted by the guys like Ian Rappaport or the Field Yates of the world, or specifically where you're living in Ohio. I know Mary Kay is a big name out there, very well respected Browns reporter. So it felt rewarding. It was cool to kind of see that. It was my Twitter was blowing up all day, but it's brings me back to why we're here. I'm just jacked up about this football season now, man. I think it's fair to say that. I think the last couple of days alone with the Richardson news and the Danielle Hunter news, which we're going to get to, I'm sure in a little bit, it has completely shifted kind of how, I mean, at least on Monday, people were excited about this Vikings football team. Excitement levels can vary on Vikings Twitter. I'm sure if you're a Vikings fan, you know that by now, but I'm jacked up about this 2021 season. Vikings fans kind of had to witness a very disappointing year in 2020, and I think it's fair to expect a pretty big bounce back in 2021.
Yeah, I was thinking about it today at work, and I was trying to come up with a good analogy, or like a metaphor, I guess, for what this season is. And right now, to me, I'm starting to get pessimistic, and I think it's because I like to be the guy that goes against the grain and that has his own little opinions and has the hot take, what have you. But do you remember when in like 2012 the Lakers decided to get a big three, and the big three was going to be Kobe, who was already old, Steve Nash, who was way older than old, and then Dwight Howard, who was, he was good in Orlando, but like, what was he really? I'm worried that that's going to be Vikings fans this year because, like, we're like, oh, yeah, well, resurrecting the secondary with Patrick Peterson. And it's like, yeah, it's a good name, but, like, what's he got left in the tank? So I'm starting to get a little pessimistic, but there's always going to be that piece inside of me. You look back at our schedule prediction video, and I think I predicted us to only lose about, 4 or 5 games this year. I really do like what the Vikings have done. This is assuming that, the offensive line is going to be better with Davis and Darisaw stepping in there. It's assuming Patrick Peterson still has a little bit left. Cam Dantzler is going to take that next step. But I agree with you, man. I'm hesitantly excited about this season. I just want to keep my hopes in check because it seems like every year the team either gives us a lot of reasons to be optimistic, or they don't do anything in the offseason, but they're coming off of a playoff run, so everybody's got to get better, and that means next year's the Super Bowl. But I think the chips are all in this season. I really do. Now, there's a couple of signings that we're going to talk about tonight. I think the big three of them are Bashad Breeland, who goes by Breezy, and I listened to his interview, and he's an electric factory. I love listening to him talk. Danielle Hunter restructuring his deal and coming back, and then Sheldon Richardson, which of course was broken by at Jack_H_Day. The H, of course, standing for hot, because he's on fire as of late. But let's start with the smallest of the names, and let's get bigger as the show goes on. Let's start with Bashad Breeland. Jack, I want to hear it from you. One, how many months ago did you hear that we were signing Bashad Breeland? And then two, what do you expect him to do? Is he going to be rotation? Is he just depth? Or do you think he comes in and him and Pat Pete are maybe going to be number one and number two this season.
I think there's going to be somewhat of a rotation. I don't know. It's still early, and obviously there's still a month or so away until training camp kicks off. But that's why I think it's fair for Vikings fans to be a little bit more excited. I will say I didn't know before the Breland signing. I did know, I think the week he visited the Vikings, it was a Thursday visit, and I knew he was coming like that Monday or Tuesday. So I heard the name, was excited about getting him in here, and I think Vikings fans should be excited that he's here. He won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, and not only did he win a Super Bowl with the Chiefs, he intercepted Jimmy Garoppolo in that game. He led the Chiefs in tackles in that game. All of his PFF stuff is good. It's not like extremely fantastic, but last year the Vikings cornerback room was so atrocious that we'll take anything above a 65 in that 70 range. The guy can play football. He's talented. And where was I was going somewhere with this, and I just kind of
Well, while you
lost.
while you kind of get back on your train of thought, or recoup that thought that you lost, I will say, talking about PFF, he is PFF's, like, from last season. He was the most improved defensive player, so he's definitely on the upswing right now. I mean, he's coming off of one of his better seasons as a football player. Coming off of shoulder surgery, so we'll see how that factors into everything. But I'll kick it back over to you, just because I did think that was a neat stat from PFF.
Yeah, and I think he fits what Mike Zimmer. Everyone's talking about how Mike Zimmer saw his defense last year, and he's not having that again in 2021. And the depth there, now they have Bashad Breeland as if he's the fourth cornerback on the roster, and whoever you have after, if it's Harrison Hand, excuse me, if the Jeff Gladney situation gets resolved, I don't know where that stands currently either. But you have depth there. You have depth now on the D line that we're going to talk about, and there's even some depth. Not as much. I think that's probably the weakest link is the depth in the linebacking group. But there are some young names that are worth getting excited for. I have a couple things written down here from when I talked about Breeland recently. 72.9 coverage grade, was ranked as the 18th ranked cornerback, 67.7 overall grade, and a 55.6 completion percentage allowed when targeted, which also ranked 18th amongst the cornerbacks around the league. So the guy can play. I don't know if it's fair for there's a lot of buzz around Cameron Dancer, and rightfully so. He ended that last season on a high note. I know there was some miscommunication, some weird plays like that DK Metcalf play in Seattle, but what we saw at Cameron Dancer was exciting. I know you love his nickname, the Needle. That's one of the coolest nicknames. I think he put
It's a
on,
good one.
I think it was 10 or so pounds he put on this offseason, and he had a smaller frame. If he could beef up a little bit and not, I think there's that worry that if he does beef up, could he lose some of that speed, which they saw at the NFL Combine just a year ago. But I think the depth in that secondary, and this goes without even talking about Harrison Smith, who's one of the best safeties in the league, and then Xavier Woods, who I have extremely high hopes for in that free safety role heading into the season. But a cornerback room this year with a somewhat established now Cameron Dancer, a Patrick Peterson, who, yes, it is going to be interesting to see if he has gas left in the tank, but to maybe bring a little bit of optimism out of you with the Patrick Peterson situation. Patrick Peterson and Xavier Rhodes are the same exact age, which when I found that out, and that blew my mind. I thought Rhodes was younger. I thought Peterson was a few years older than Rhodes was, but and Terrence Newman is another name that comes to mind. Obviously, I don't know. I don't think it's fair to expect Patrick Peterson to be playing into his upper 30s like Terrence Newman did, but Mike Zimmer was able to get whatever Terrence Newman had left in the tank, and I think he's going to be able to do the same with both Breeland and Patrick Peterson.
Yeah, it's funny with Peterson. I actually went back and I've been on like a kick of just listening to interviews, just trying to get as much content and football in my life as I can right now. And I listened to Peterson when he came here, and he actually talked about Terrence Newman and Leon Hall and Deion Sanders being some of the big names that Zimmer has coached as a defensive back specialist or a head coach. And he did mention that, you look at these guys, they're all playing late into their 30s. And I think I think that's what Patrick Peterson wants to do. And I really do think he's a guy that's coming in to play on a 1-year deal, prove that he's still got a lot left, and then he'll probably go down to Tampa Bay and win a Super Bowl championship with Tom Brady or something. But I do think he's here to prove himself and then get out of town and make a ton of money. So Good on him, and hey, I hope he does, because I don't care if we don't give him a ton of money, but if he plays really well, it means that the Vikings are going to be playing really well. But on Bashad Breeland, like you said, that interception in the Super Bowl, and also last year seeing some real improvements in his game. To me, it is a depth thing where he comes in. I think right now the secondary, once we're in the nickel package, which is basically the new base in the NFL, I do think the package is uh, Peterson, Danslow, and then Mac Alexander in the slot. Especially with Jeff Gladney being up in the air and his situation. But Breeland comes in, I think immediately if Danslow or Patrick Peterson do get dinged up, or maybe if they're just having a bad day, Breeland can step in. And I think the Vikings' strategy on defense this season, at least with the defensive line and the secondary, is throw as much stuff at the wall as you can and just hope a bunch of it sticks. So that way, if Peterson doesn't work out, let's throw Breeland in. If Breeland doesn't work out, maybe we have Jeff Gladney there. But maybe we have a guy like Harrison Hand there that we can throw in, and let's see how he works out. So a lot of shots. Moving on to that defensive line, though, very quiet on offense this offseason. I think Mike Zimmer really has his footprints all over this, fingerprints all over this, I guess. But Sheldon Richardson back to Minnesota, left to go to Cleveland for I think 2 seasons. Played 2 years out of a 3-year deal. He's pretty peed off because the Browns cut him after free agency, after the draft. They didn't, give him any chance to go sign somewhere for big bucks. Basically, everybody spent all of their money by this point. So Richardson comes back to Minnesota. The scheme hasn't changed much. He's going to come in, be a rotational pass rusher. What do you see his role being? I've heard some people talking about how he could potentially play left defensive end for us this year. Do you see him being a starter, or do you think he's just a pass downs guy?
I think Zimmer said today, it was either today or yesterday, he had a press conference and they asked him the same question. And he said, I think right now his plan is to have him more of a rotational pass rusher, which we've seen in the good Mike Zimmer years in these odd seasons, which is, I said this yesterday, I don't look too much into the odd even season, but it is a weird little pattern that Mike Zimmer has going with the Minnesota Vikings. But having depth on the defensive line, I think, is one of the most critical things. I mean, you just saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers absolutely granted the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line was pretty banged up, but they had pass rushers that could get the job done and get after Patrick Mahomes and make him uncomfortable. And Andrew Kramer of the Star Tribune, and I've heard some reports of this, I know they've run some packages throughout practices that have been open to the media. They've had some 3-4 looks, which if you have a 3-4 look, there's a potential front 5 of Michael Pierce as your nose tackle, Sheldon Richardson and Delvin Tomlinson as your 2 defensive ends, and your 2 outside linebackers are Danielle Hunter and Anthony Barr. And if you're telling me you're a quarterback in the NFL and you are not scared of that front 5, I would be absolutely terrified. I'm scared. I'd be scared, I think, seeing Danielle Hunter opposite of me across from the ball. But that is a huge reason why this team fell apart in 2020. They had no depth on that defensive line. They could not get, Yannick Ngakoue still leads the 2020 Vikings in sacks, and he only played in 6 games. So Sheldon Richardson, I think Ngakoue had 5 sacks for the Vikings. Sheldon Richardson had 4.5 sacks in Cleveland. So he had a half sack less than Ngakoue had for the Vikings before he got traded to Baltimore. And I think there's a potential. I think someone tweeted out he had like 200 or so snaps from the outside. Could he shift to the outside and kind of ease some of these younger guys like the DJ Wanhams? I know Weatherly can potentially be that starter. I don't know if that's what the decision the team's going to make, but I know we talked about this after the draft, but we're excited about Patrick Jones and we're excited about Janarius Robinson too. There's just guys, and Jalen, that I just said all of this without even bringing up Jalen Twyman, who I know we were excited about that 6th round selection as well. So there is a lot of depth on the defensive line that was not a thing in 2020. And I think that really hurt. Not only did it hurt their run game, where like you have the likelihood or Elvin Kamara rushing for 6 touchdowns on the Vikings on Christmas. That wasn't a very good Christmas present for Vikings fans. That's not going to happen again. And they have the rotation. It's going to help the secondary as well. The secondary was a lot more youthful in 2020 with Gladney starting and Dancer getting starts. Now they go out and they get Patrick Peterson. They still have Harrison Smith. They get Breland. Hopefully Dancer emerges in year 2. They have an Xavier Woods, who in my opinion is a very good free safety. He can play that deep roaming coverage, and I think Dallas kind of used him wrong last year in 2020. He was more playing that Harrison Smith role. That's not what he is. I think he's more of a ball hawk safety. And I'm just starting to ramble on and on because if you can't tell, I'm very excited about this 2021 season. So I think it all starts up front, as cliche as that is in football talk. It's true. It does all start up front. And the Vikings have a lot of talent along that defensive line now.
Yeah, and you can't talk about the defensive line without bringing him up. The stud, the best pass rusher in the NFC North. I said it. Khalil Mack is not Danielle Hunter. He's just not. Danielle Hunter's built different. I'm just saying things at this point to make my dad mad at me, but because he's a big Danielle Hunter anti-trutho. But we bring Hunter back, and the joy that him coming back brought me when I saw he was expected to come back to camp, and it was like, okay, cool. There must be a deal in the works. Like that's I think what everybody thought immediately, and then it turns out what a win-win scenario. We basically say here's $5 million, and we're either gonna cut you and let you go see free agency next season, or we will get you a deal done. And you will be the guy for seasons to come. He's still pretty young. I think he's 25 now. I'm not positive, but I remember he's a pretty young player. Had 14 and a half sacks back-to-back seasons before his neck injury. He comes back to that defensive line, and all of a sudden, the Vikings will not be led by a guy that they traded away week 5 in sacks this season. I can almost guarantee that. My expectations for Danielle Hunter, even coming off of that neck injury, are through the roof. I'm expecting 12 sacks as the basement, and I think the ceiling is like a 19 to 20 sack season. If he really plays pissed off and the NFL doesn't get the memo, especially with the extra game and everything. And he has a tendency to sack, Detroit Lions quarterbacks like 10 times. So, there's that. So really excited that we got that deal done. Just he helps in the run game. He helps rushing the passer. He's an all-around defensive end. And the thought of him lining up, standing up as a linebacker, he's athletic enough. I pitched this back when I first started writing for Vikings Territory and Purple PTSD. Let's not fully transition, but let's throw some 3-4 looks into the offense or into the defense, because I guarantee nothing's going to throw off Jared Goff more or a young Justin Fields more than Danielle Hunter staring you down and then dropping back into a little zone and just covering. And he's a freak athlete. I think he would be able to do it at a decently high level. He's not gonna, I don't want to see him do it more than 2 or 3 times a game. But what a wrinkle you could throw into the defense with that. And that brings me on to the Richardson topic of him being an end in a 3-4 defense. It's just, oh man. My heart says this is number 1 defense material. It really, like, the optimistic side of me is so excited. But Jack, talk about Danielle Hunter and his strong chin and his 15 sacks a year and just how good of a player he is.
Yeah, that was the biggest news that Vikings fans could have asked for at this point in the season. It's mini camp. It's still a little bit slow, but there's people that are right across the border in Wisconsin that aren't having as fun of a mini camp session going on right now with the Aaron Rodgers stuff going on. Not sure if you saw that. They were interviewing him yesterday for the match or whatever for the golf thing, and he was wearing a shirt that said, what did it say?
I'm offended.
I'm offended. And there was like a little emoji as well. Like, I said this yesterday too. He might be the most petty quarterback in the entire NFL, and I am all here for it when it's damaging him and his relationship with the Green Bay Packers. But Danielle Hunter, he's the type of player that every NFL executive, every single coach, they want that guy or a guy like him on their roster. He is a complete difference maker. I said this too. I don't know if he's the most or the most, how does it word it? If he was the most important, but he can make the biggest differences on this team. There are guys like Harrison Smith. I think Eric Kendricks is extremely important. I think the cornerback play is going to be important. I mean, the defense now with the Neil Hunter coming back, it's solidified. And personally, I'll go on the record saying this right now. I don't know if Mike Zimmer as a head coach, so just during his time in Minnesota, yes, he's had some number one ranked defenses. I don't think he's ever had this much talent on his defense heading into the season. I wouldn't be saying that if Danielle Hunter wasn't reporting to minicamp, because we'd still be talking about, hey, Danielle Hunter's not at minicamp. What the hell is going on? Are we going to figure out a way to get him happy, get him here? Also sounds like everything medically is 100% checked out and he's good to go. He said that today. He's excited to get back on the football field. There's a quote about him saying like how much it sucked having to watch this team last year and he couldn't be out there to help. He's going to help this year. And I love that you said the number 12 for his floor for sacks, because that's exactly what I'm expecting at the very least. If everything's accurate and he's 100% healthy, I'm expecting a big season out of Danielle Hunter. He still has that weird, whatever they did with the contract, where it's like they're either going to have to pay him like 18 or $20 million. They're going to have to restructure. They're going to have to cut him. So I think he's going to have a little bit of a fire within him, and he's going to be going after opposing quarterbacks with that fire. And he is the last guy on this roster that I would want to go up against pissed off. I will tell you that right now. The guy has veins in his arms that are bigger than my biceps, I think. So,
and at this point, he's not just playing, like, he's pissed off. He's playing to make like $22 million next year. So if he plays well, he's going to hit that. We honestly better hope that he doesn't just come out and get 20 sacks in the first 8 weeks and then decide to just put it in cruise control for the rest of the season. Like, this is going to be an angry freak athlete that is an expert at getting to quarterbacks. We do have our first comment of the night. It is Jeff Hawthorne, my old man, saying, great reporting, Jack. A little, nod, tip of the cap for Jack breaking that Sheldon Richardson news, of course. NFL Insider Jack Day. But I didn't mean to cut you off. I did just want to throw that out there. But please continue.
No, I was pretty much wrapping up anyways. This is the reason for Vikings fans to be excited. It's not the same necessarily as a quarterback that's coming off of an MVP season. Sure, it's probably a little bit worse for the Green Bay Packers, but Vikings fans last year had to witness quarterbacks of opposing teams have all day to just sit in the pocket and pick apart a youthful secondary. That secondary is not youthful anymore. There are weapons all along littered across this defensive line. And we just had an entire show, or an entire 30 minutes or so that we're talking. I don't know, you have the timer, but we just did all of this without even bringing up Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr, who I think is a top 3 linebacking tandem in the entire NFL. I mean, Eric Kendricks, one of the Vikings reporters reported today that Eric Kendricks was playing or practicing today, and you could tell he looked like he was already back to his all-pro level. Anthony Barr, not playing last year with that torn pec. I think that is something that kind of goes under the radar, and people don't necessarily fully give Anthony Barr the credit he deserves. Anthony Barr is the leader of this defense, and he's the signal caller for this defense. It's just like losing. I mean, it's probably not as significant as losing a quarterback, obviously, but Anthony Barr, he has the green dot on his helmet, and he's calling the plays. He runs this defense. He knows this defense. You lose that vocal aspect of the defense, especially with how young this defense was last year, it hurts. The Vikings are now, I believe, one of the, if not the, I think they're 3rd or 4th youngest teams in the entire NFL. And Anthony Barr and Patrick Peterson are 2 of the oldest players on the roster. So I think that's a good problem to have. This, I know there's a lot of guys still here on 1-year deals, but not only for the 2020 season or 2021 season, but for the future seasons after that. I think this franchise is in good hands for years to come.
And this is something that I think broke while we were on break as well, that I want to throw in there, because we actually, for the first time in this show's history, we're under time right now, so let's talk about Sean Payton and how much of a bastard he is. But we do have another chat from Daniel Peterson saying, who the hell is Jack Day? LOL. Hi from Cedro Woolley, Washington. So, hello, Daniel. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. And feel free to drop any comments you have about this Vikings defense, or even the offense, because we're not giving them much love. but we need a wide receiver three. Jack, when are we signing Larry Fitzgerald? I know you know. Look at your phone.
I
Give me
don't
the
know if
date.
that I don't know if that I mean if you want to preach getting some younger guys in here, I mean Larry Fitz is obviously no spring chicken by any means, but it would be super cool. And I pretty sure there was a scenario. I don't know if I saw it on Twitter or if we were talking about it, but getting to see if it would have been the Arizona Cardinals that would have won the Super Bowl last year, getting to see Larry Fitzgerald go out on top. Larry Fitz, why not do that with your home team, the Minnesota Vikings? You help them. I know Larry Fitzgerald is getting up there in age, but he still has some gas in the tank. He's one of the most reliable wide receivers in our entire lifetime. He's been a fantastic playmaker for whatever the last 15, 20 years, however long he's been in Arizona. And like I said, there's the pictures where Randy Moss is out on the field and he's the ball boy for those games. It's a
Well,
match made in heaven.
Chris Caldo and Randy Moss, they talk. They're like, yeah, the wide receivers used to go to Larry Fitzgerald high school games, like, and just watch him play. And it was like the '98 Vikings would just roll up to some no-name high school and be like, hey, what's going on? We're here to watch our ball boy, who's going to be a Hall of Famer someday.
It's funny that you bring up wide receiver three, though, because I think we just talked about all these guys that the Vikings went out and spent a bunch of money on, obviously, to fix up that defense. The biggest signing they had, I saw this on Twitter today and got a kick out of this. The biggest signing the Vikings had on the offensive side of the ball in the 2021 offseason was everybody's favorite wide receiver three, Chad Beebe. He was the one that made the most money this offseason, which shows you exactly how much money they spent this offseason. But I don't know if it's as big of a priority. I know a lot of the people that want the Vikings to start airing it out more, which I agree with. I think you got to let Kirk Cousins sling it a little bit more. But Tyler Conklin and Irv Smith Jr. are going to be on the field for a lot of snaps in 2021. That's just the style of offense they have. It's still going to be run through Delvin Cook, but you still have Justin Jefferson. You have Adam Thielen. I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, they were talking about this on K-Fan today, and Paul Allen was interviewing Zimmer, I believe, and they were talking about Amir Smith-Marset, and he was saying that he's very confident. There's guys saying that they haven't seen him leave Adam Thielen's back pocket, which you'd love to hear that out of these rookies. He's trying to learn the ropes, and I mean, if you turn on the film, the guy he's an athletic freak. He runs good routes. He's got to stop front flipping in the end zone because he's going to get hurt, and we don't need that. But I will not be shocked. It's a rookie wide receiver and a Mike Zimmer led team, so I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, Smith-Marset's going to be on the field in week one, because I don't necessarily believe that. But I'm not going to be shocked if we're doing the show halfway into the season and Amir Smith-Marset has clearly become the favorite, that wide receiver three spot. And maybe he starts, if he could emerge into that role, not only would that be huge for this team in 2021, but when Adam Thielen starts to get up there in age a couple years down the road, the keys could be handed over to Smith-Marset, and you already have another liable option in this offense. Yes, then you're going to get there and it's going to be two wide receivers again, and people are going to be asking who's wide receiver three at that point. But we can worry about that in 3-4 years down the road when we get there. But yeah, I think I don't expect, as of right now, last time I heard, I'm not expecting any splashy. I know a lot of guys are making the ties between the Jaguars' old wide receiver coach and D.D. Westbrook still being out there, but there's just not, there's nothing that's going to be extremely splashy. I think the splashiest signing would be a Larry Fitz, just because he has the Minnesota ties. There's people talking about D.D. Westbrook, like I just said, and Golden Tate. But all of those guys, aside from D.D. Westbrook, I think D.D. Westbrook's probably 27, 28. So he's still kind of in that prime, but he's also coming off of a leg injury, or I think it was a knee injury just a year ago. So I like, and Thielen said this week too. He likes the depth of this wide receiver room. I know we just talked about this. I brought up Chad Beebe. Didn't even talk about BC Johnson, who had a really good camp last year. There was a lot of raving about him in the 2020 training camp. And I think it's a wide open competition between him, Chad Beebe, Smith-Marset. And like I said, someone's going to be out there on the field for that wide receiver three when it's third and long. But more often than not, I fully expect this team to be running a heavy dosage of 12 personnel.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Larry Fitz thing, to me, it actually does make sense, not just because, oh, what a feel-good story, but if he does have anything left, he's been playing in the slot a lot over the last few years. If he could come in and be a wide receiver three, if the Vikings have said, they haven't said they haven't released the official Twitter or the tweet or whatever, but it's clear the chips are in for 2021. They have signed tons of 1 year deals, signed Fitz to a 1 year deal, let him play. I mean, what's the if it's a 1 year deal? Like, unless you're gonna get a guy like D.D. Westbrook, or I don't really think Golden Tate works as well. But I don't know. I'm not super familiar with Golden Tate. I mean, I know he modeled the Vikings year after year, but I don't know how he's aged. I didn't watch a lot of the Giants last year, if I'm being honest, but I don't know. This is what I'll leave with. This is my final thought of the night because we now, we've hit time. If Justin Jefferson, I'm going to give the offense some love. If Justin Jefferson has the same stats that he had last year, and he's going to stout, if healthy, 3 more games because he didn't start weeks 1 and 2, and then there's an extra game at the end of the year. If he has the same exact receiving yardage numbers, he will shadow Odell Beckham Jr.'s record for the most receiving yards in the first 2 years. And I've heard a lot of people that have bigger names than Jordan Hawthorne and Jack Day. Jack, no offense, not that you're on your way, but I've heard some big names talking on live television about how Justin Jefferson takes the step this year, and you can't have the top 5 wide receiver conversation without putting his name in there. And I'm excited about it. I do think he can do it. Justin Jefferson, I like what I have been listening to his interviews, watching some videos. He went to what's his name? The punter on YouTube. I can't remember his name. I can't think of his name at all, and it's killing me. But he went and he, worked out with him, and did some outrunning and things like that. And he's a special talent. The Vikings, I hope they can keep him. I hope he doesn't turn into like the Randy Moss where we have to, ship him off to New England and do all of that. I hope he's a lifelong Viking. Love him to death. And this is it. He's going to shadow that Odell Beckham Jr. record, put his name in history books once again like he did last year. Jack, I'll let you close this out with, whatever you have to say, and then a skull as always, and then we'll let these people go.
Yeah, I'm here for what you just said. I think Justin Jefferson is going to have another extremely exciting season. I think Kirk Cousins, the biggest worry point now, it was the Danielle Hunter stuff, but the biggest thing to be concerned about as a Minnesota Vikings fan, you're probably not going to want to hear this because it's the same concern that it's been for the last 6, 7, 8 years. It comes down to this offensive line, and this offense again has all of the playmakers that they need. They have a quarterback that can sling it if he gets protection. Two names is Wyatt Davis and Christian Darisoff. Wyatt Davis isn't starting over Dozier. Why, if he's not starting over Dakota Dozier in 2021, I think there's gonna be a lot of fans upset because they saw some poor play out of Dakota Dozier in 2020. They saw plays where it looked like he was rushing after Kirk Cousins, and it was not pretty. Rashad Hill has been getting a lot of the reps. Yes, Christian Darisaw has been kind of working. It sounds like it's precautionary with his groin injury. But if he somehow isn't starting at left tackle, and that's Rashad Hill, this offensive line that has a lot of high hopes, it might not be pretty. It could be very similar to what it was last year, what it's been for the first 3 seasons of the Kirk Cousins experiment. And that is not going to be ideal for the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, their defense is very talented. Yes, they have the playmakers. If those 2 rookies come in and they are even average at best to start their rookie campaigns, this is going to be a very, very special football team. And I will stand behind that. I still think it's going to be a very special football team. Don't need to go on too long of a rant. I know it's still just mini camp. We're not even a training camp yet, and we're talking about this stuff. But the Minnesota Vikings have all the pieces in play to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, deep playoff run. They have the coaching staff. That's another worry with the switch in offensive coordinator, but Mike Zimmer has had that, I think, in like 6 or 7 of his 7 or 8 years, however long he's been here. He's had a new offensive coordinator every single year, except for the 2 years that he had Gary Kubiak. He hands it over to his son. It's going to be interesting to see how he implements stuff from his dad, if he implements stuff from Kevin Stefanski. He's kind of been through with some pretty well-known offensive-minded coaches now in the league. So this team, it has all the pieces in the world to be excited for. It's fair to expect at the very least, a playoff team in 2021. And I think Vikings fan, it looks like you're getting excited, so I don't want to, or you have something to say, so I don't want to say school.
You're good. You're good. I think I had something, but then I lost it because I was fighting off a yawn because I don't like to yawn on camera. So I was fighting it off, and I was like, "No, don't yawn, don't yawn," and I ended up just making a silly face.
That's fair. I didn't want to start. I didn't want to say anything and then not give you the
No,
chance
you're
to finish
a-okay.
it
That's
out.
what
But
Twitter's for. Which, by the way, go follow the show at LTB Vikings. It's been down on the tickle the whole time. Subscribe to the YouTube, like the videos. Smash that like button, all that good stuff. And then you can see, I put, a little bit of extra production value in now that there's an NFL insider on the show. Jack, of course, for breaking news, follow him at Jack_H_day. You can follow myself at JHawthorne16. But anything that doesn't get said on the show, I'm sure will get tweeted out and get talked about on there. But that will be the last from me, and I'll try not to make any dumb faces for the rest of the show.
yeah, I don't have a whole lot left to say. All I'll leave you with is I think it's fair that Vikings fans, I've gone back and forth from being optimistic Jack and then not so optimistic Jack. Optimistic Jack is 100% back ahead of training camp in 2021. I think this Vikings team, like I said, has all the pieces of the puzzle. I guess I shouldn't say all the pieces of the puzzle because I don't really want to talk about our kicking situation headed into the season. We'll worry about that when we get to the season. We'll start talking about kickers when we get to the season. I don't know why I brought that up right at the end of the show. Probably not the best timing to bring that up, but
because optimistic Jack is not completely back to life.
not fully. Let's see him split the uprights a couple times before. I think that's fair for all Vikings fans that they want to see that, especially maybe it's what they need. Maybe it's just like, you know what? We've tried the Bailey. We've tried drafting someone. They had the Dan Bailey experiment. They had Kai Forbath. This is just some kid that they took off someone's practice squad that no one really knows a lot about. And maybe that's the best possible situation that the Vikings can have. We can cross our fingers. We can knock on wood. We can hope. That's all that Minnesota sports has been about in my 20